The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for Need to Know for this week. Kip Kiefer on the TKR network, and delighted to be here as always. Hope everybody is having a tremendous May so far. Hard to believe we're already past the halfway mark, but that's just the way it goes these days. You blink and another month is behind you. Plenty of going on in the headlines today, and I usually try and tie what we talk about here on Need to Know to things I think you need to know, because I know a lot of people are not consumed with poring over the news every day and following all the different information sources. A lot of people get their information from all kinds of different places, and that usually yields a lot of different perspectives, because news is no longer news. News is a product now of not journalistic ethics and trying to find balance in both sides of a story. It is basically opinion pieces from the narrators or writers trying to get you around to their way of thinking. And that's really unfortunate, because I think the central theme of this show is I urge everybody to gather facts, get some information, and think for yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes us all individuals. That's what the liberty of being an American is all about. It's being active and proactive is the word I should have said. It's about being proactive when you are fired up about something, and it's being measured and just well informed when there's a lot of hoopla about things that you really don't need to be terribly concerned about, that someone else demands you be concerned about. And of course, that's what our headlines are filled with. The other thing I try to do is tie in the theme each week with personal experiences I have in between broadcasts. And I had the occasion to just kind of tag along to a social event that I normally would not have gone to this weekend. And a lot of younger folks there, and when I say younger, these were a lot of 30-somethings, and that's considerably younger than I am at this point, but people that I don't really get to interact with all that much. Friends of my nephews and my son, different people that I come across, and I'm not heavily engaged in the conversations at these kind of things. I kind of just hang back and listen, and that's sort of what happened this weekend. But I think it really was a great introduction to what I want to talk about here, because a couple of guys nearby got into a discussion about Donald Trump, and it was very interesting to hear their perspectives. One of them was very pro-Trump, and Trump has become, for a lot of people that again don't follow all of this news and nonsense that we're going to talk about here, happening every day right now in New York City, where he's basically been ordered to be in court every single day during this trial that's winding down finally. I'll get into that in just a minute. But one guy was very pro-Trump. And if you're pro-Trump, it's not necessarily endorsing the man personally. It's thinking back. We've very seldom in history ever had an opportunity to compare back-to-back two presidential terms and be able to draw direct correlations from those. The only example in American history I can think of was in the 1880s, when Grover Cleveland was the president of the United States, and he ran for re-election against a candidate named Benjamin Harrison and lost. Harrison took the presidency. In the next election, they had a rematch, because Grover Cleveland ran again against Harrison, and this time Grover Cleveland won. So you had two back-to-back 4-year terms with different presidents, and that's what we have, of course, in this situation where Trump is running for get back in the White House and kick out the guy who allegedly beat him in the last election. I'm not going to get into election malfunctions. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I accept the results. That's how the process works. But there's a lot of things to talk about on what happened in the emergency situation of 2020, the COVID year. And I think we've touched on a lot of that. So I'm not rehashing that today. But the guy he was talking to immediately launched into, I just can't believe that anybody in their right mind could even consider voting for Donald Trump. And I got to keep qualifying things here. If you're just listening for the first time, I've been on TKR now for at least a year and a half, maybe longer. I don't. Maybe last summer, I think, is when we started, or maybe summer before last. I have no concept of time, but I do know I have said consistently, anybody who wants to label me a Trump lover, that's just laughable. Because a lot of times when Twitter was still going and it was a lot more toxic than it is now as X, anything flattering or anything positive that you would write about any policy of Donald Trump's, about anything about his presidency, about foreign policy, things working out, peace breaking out throughout the Middle East for the first time in centuries. Anytime that you would say anything positive, you would immediately be tagged by the trolling commenters that you are a quote Trump lover. I am far from a Trump lover. I think Donald Trump is a very skilled individual who has an unbelievable abundance of energy. The guy's 77 years old. Talking to my partner, Terry Quillian, over the weekend. She's down in Dallas. Trump, after going through the trial last week in New York, was given permission to court was not in session last Friday. The judge, after initially saying he couldn't go, Trump's youngest son, Barron, graduated from high school on Friday. Trump flew from New York down to Florida for the graduation ceremony. Some really great footage. No matter how you feel about the guy personally, when you see somebody not in a orchestrated situation, cheering so enthusiastically when his son was introduced to go get his diploma, I mean, it touches my heart as a dad, being able to witness that a couple times, both at the high school and college level, and it was really cool. So he went from there down to Texas after the graduation ceremony and a party, flew in late at night on Friday, got up on Saturday morning, was at the golf course to tee it up about 8:15. This guy's 77 years old. He's put in a long week. He's traveled from New York to Florida, now to Dallas. He plays 18 holes. He goes to a luncheon and some other event, and then he addresses that night the NRA convention in Dallas. The guy has a bundle of energy and is just a natural in front of a crowd. Okay, you don't like his personality. You don't like his brashness. People say that he's not presidential, whatever. The bottom line is I'm not a Trump lover, but I was a Trump loving American in the 4 years he was president because we had a booming economy. He had cut taxes and particularly cut corporate tax, which allowed a lot of companies to hire a lot more people, expand their payrolls, bring business back to this country that had gone overseas. Everything was going well. We were energy independent for the first time in decades, and we're exporting oil to Europe and other places in the world. Things were going great. The Keystone Pipeline was going to revolutionize the ability to get refined oil to the marketplace up in the Northeast and even into Canada. All that was going great. The building was proceeding. More drilling was planned in productive areas that we know for a fact are going to yield tremendous amounts of product. And it all came to a thundering halt with the election of Joe Biden. So comparing apples to apples, the 4 years of Donald Trump compared to the 3.5 years now so far of this president, it's night and day. This country is in disarray. The economy's terrible. They tell you that the economy is doing great. Well, do you believe that when you go? I went out with my son for pizza this weekend for lunch, and we got a I don't know how big it was, a 14-inch pizza or whatever, and two soft drinks, $33. Uh, again, and I don't quibble over, I'm not the kind of guy drives around uh 10 extra miles because gas is 3 cents cheaper at an exit about 9 miles away. Uh, at the end of the day, who cares? 3, 4, $5. But a lot of families are on tight budgets. They have to buy food for their kids, have to pay utilities and house payments. It's tough right now. About 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is a horrifying thing to think about. They want to talk about how great employment numbers are. Well, people have to be employed to survive, not to mention the fact that the kind of jobs that have been created, and a lot of those jobs have not been created in the Biden administration. They've been restored because of the ridiculous COVID reaction, overreaction, where everything got shut down. And again, Donald Trump is the first to admit that he took advice from some people that turned out to not be credible. And if he had to do over again, he certainly would have gone a different route. But he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't in that situation, because if he had just let everything stay open and not taken strong measures to try and control the spreading epidemic, and people would have become more affected, and there'd been millions more deaths and destructions, then he would have been second guessed throughout history as the most inept and irresponsible president ever. But so by taking the measures he took based on the advice, supposedly trust the science, that's what they kept saying. But there were also nefarious elements involved in that. The pharmaceutical companies, of course, in line for a gigantic payday. The dirty little secret that you don't hear anybody talking about is the healthcare systems, the huge corporate entities that control healthcare in this country, made an absolute king's ransom fortune from the COVID-19 situation. Doctors all over the country benefited because they were getting payoffs from all kinds of different government and pharmaceutical entities. The whole deal was a huge economic blockbuster for that segment of our system. And for Americans, it was a miserable situation, particularly for small business people that really saw their livelihood go right down the drain. A lot of those businesses have never come back. But a lot of the other jobs being created by the Biden administration, get ready for this, they are government positions, just what we need. Let's get more government employees to expand the bloated, obese federal government we already have. That's what we need. More bureaucrats, more consultants. Good grief. That's the fastest growing market segment is the U.S. government, which is just a stunning thing. And also service jobs in terms of like waitresses and bellmen and people in those kind of customer service areas. Not exactly career high paying positions. So don't get fooled by some nerd coming on and telling you, well, the employment numbers are outstanding. We've created, I don't know what the claim is now. We've created 18 million jobs. It's just not true. The economy is not doing well. It's clear with wars happening in two different places in the world that were quiet during the Trump administration that we have shoveled billions of dollars to fund, and there's no end in sight in this Ukraine-Russia conflict. But I guess we'll just keep ponying up billions of dollars every year, which I'm convinced in the most corrupt country in the world, Ukraine, at least half of that is going into pockets and not into military equipment. No telling how much Russia's benefiting from this war because with Biden as president and his cutting off all U.S. energy sources, now Russia's back in the business, as well as Iran, who we had pretty much completely shut down under the Trump administration. They're both making hundreds of millions of dollars on their sale of energy that should not even be feasible. There's a lot of sidebars to a lot of this, but the bottom line is the 4 years of Trump compared to the coming up on 4 years of Biden, night and day. It is absolutely not comparable. This is so much worse in the current situation in the country, the division, that the great unifier. He's going to get everybody back together, and we're all going to be singing Kumbaya and holding hands. All that is so laughable, because this administration is the most divisive ever. Did you hear the remarks from the president at Morehead College? At Morehouse College. I was going to say over the weekend before he went there, he said he was going to be at Morehead, and of course it's Morehouse, the probably most prominent historically black college or university in the country. Biden declared he was going to be giving the commencement address at Morehead. Anyway, he gave that commencement address, and the students were ordered to be respectful, no protests, no outbursts, or the president of the school said he was going to immediately stop the ceremony. The crowd was very respectful, but Biden just rattled on and on about congratulations on your accomplishment, but you're in for a real tough fight because, no matter how accomplished and how smart and how qualified that African-American people are in this country, you're not going to have the same opportunities as other people. Really played all of that complete nonsense. And there's a lot of really prominent voices being heard today that are outraged with those comments of telling people that Biden telling people if he lost the election, then all of them were just destined to a life of no opportunity and no place to go. And despite their credentials, they would be overlooked. Well, during the Biden administration and during the Obama administration and during the Clinton administration, et cetera, I don't see a lot of advancement in this country on those particular topics in terms of what these guys have done to facilitate any changes. I think, first of all, that's overblown. Right now, I employ a lot of people. If somebody walks in and applies for a position that I have, I could care less what you look like. I could care less what your religious affiliation is. I could care less who you love or who you're attracted to. If you are qualified, if you are the right fit in terms of somebody who can really help my organization and help me be better and more efficient and all the things that a great employee brings to the table, you're hired. And I think my attitude is the prevalent one now. I don't see all these Democrats who only are really interested in African American folks when it's election time because they just think they're somehow entitled to their vote. The script has changed, and I think a lot of quote minorities in this country are really starting to look at their alternatives for the first time, because there's a whole generation of folks now saying, you know what? My family and my descendants, even back to my grandparents and great grandparents, voting for Democrats, and it really doesn't make sense. Remember, the biggest opposition to the civil rights legislation of the 60s were the Southern Democrats and a big block of the Democrat Party. And all of a sudden that pivoted, and the Republicans became, not supportable, although they never really changed anything policy-wise. It's really an interesting dynamic, but I think the assessment is being made. So all that being said, back to the party on Saturday night, the basis of the other guy who said, I don't see how you could possibly vote for Trump. Don't you understand? He's indicted on 90-something criminal felony counts right now. And the other guy goes, oh, well, a lot of that's is baloney. Now I started inching closer because I knew I had to get into this conversation just to clarify some real bad information that this anti-Trump guy had, who had formed the opinion somewhere along the line that Trump's a dictator and, you know, he's going to destroy everything if he gets back in because it's going to be nothing but revenge and he's going to have people arrested. And that's pretty laughable when the guy's point was Trump facing 90 some odd criminal felony charges, but they're so laughable. This trial in New York right now is an absolute joke. It is a state case brought by a DA who ran for that office, saying he was going to take President Trump down. He's going to be anti-Trump. He is going to find violations in New York law that Trump was guilty of. So he goes looking for the crime. This is classic Marxist communist policy. Joseph Stalin's chief of his secret police once said in Soviet Russia after the Russian Revolution and just before World War II, show me the man and I'll find some charges. And that's kind of the way they're going about this. Trump is accused of funneling money to a former porn star, Stormy Daniels, because of an alleged affair back in 2006. The alleged affair was supposedly a one-time thing. He completely denies it. She has denied it at times when she's been paid off or has a chance to get a big interview. Anyway, of course, now she's revived that because the cash cow of Trump running for president again has really revived her chance to cash in some more. But okay, if that's the case, that is awful and it's disgusting if it's true. But having an affair with a porn star is not against the law. What he's charged with is his crooked lawyer, who is an admitted perjurer, just came out of jail, has been disbarred, has been proven to be the biggest liar in the country numerous times before courts and grand juries and even Congress. Michael Cohen, he's the star witness, and that alone should put it into perspective for you that a guy with that kind of record is the star witness in this proceeding. But he actually paid Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election $130,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement that basically stated that she wasn't going to talk about anything about this affair, and even denying that it ever happened. And the charge in New York is the felony charges are that Trump had his attorney, Michael Cohen, maneuver all this stuff, which again is not illegal. You can pay somebody for their silence, or, there was no criminal proceedings at that time. Certainly if you're running for president or if you're in a marriage, you don't want information like that coming out. So even if Trump was guilty of that, which has now been proven during this month-long trial that he's not, that's not against the law. So how have they brought this to a violation? Because also that happened in 2016. We are long beyond the statute of limitation by 2 years to even bring that charge if you were going to accuse Trump of doing something illicit on election situations. But still, the act of directing his attorney, if he had done so, is not illegal. But what he's being charged with is, and reason that the statute of limitation is waived, is because now the accusation is that he did that in order to finagle violation and cover up of federal election laws. They're trying to say this was a campaign expense that was never disclosed. Well, that's a federal charge. In New York State, they have no jurisdiction on federal charges. And in this entire trial for 4 weeks, they have not cited one example of what federal election law has been violated. So basically, he's being tried for making a payment which another lawyer, the lawyer that Michael Cohen retained when he got in trouble for other matters, that lawyer has testified before Congress just a couple of days ago that he was told repeatedly by Cohen, "I've got nothing on Trump. I did that on my own. I paid Stormy Daniels' lawyer to go away." And later build the Trump organization back. So they're trying to prove this is some kind of illicit payment that Trump tried to cover up. Trump doesn't personally write the checks for his gigantic organization. This is the bookkeepers that log this as a legal expense. This whole case is so laughable, and every major expert on American law, and not only the ones that you'd expect, that people that seem to go more mainstream or toward even the right or the Republican direction, even attorneys that are traditionally extraordinarily liberal have said this is just outrageous what Alvin Bragg, the New York DA, is trying to pull. And the whole case has just been a complete three-ring circus before a judge whose daughter is one of the most lucrative public relations firm for liberal and Democrat candidates. And this judge has violated himself New York law by contributing to Democrat candidates. Once you're on the bench in New York, it's explicitly against the law to contribute to political campaigns. Anyway, the whole thing is a kangaroo court. It's absolutely third world banana republic stuff. And even a New York jury in a borough that voted 90% Democrat, it's going to be absolutely astounding if they come back with anything other than a not guilty, or at the very least a hung jury, because this case has been it's being laughed at now by even some left-wing journalistic sites, that this case has never even declared what the federal violation was, because it has already been reviewed by the federal authorities, who, as we know, are not Trump friendly, and they refuse to take these cases. So it's absolutely absurd. As for the other charges, real quickly, because we're almost out of time, he's charged, of course, in Washington for inciting the January 6th situation. That case is on hold because Trump's attorneys allege that he had concerns about the irregularities in the voting process. And as president, he had every right, even though it was he was affected personally, but he had every right to weigh in on that case and express his concerns. Therefore, it would be under presidential immunity laws, and the Supreme Court has heard that case and should make a ruling late in June. The expectation is that they're going to find, to some extent, that the case should not have been brought, because presidential immunity cannot be overlooked. And also, the case is weak as hell. But the reason they want to bring it so bad is because, once again, this would be tried in Washington, D.C., which is ridiculously liberal. 88% of the vote in the most recent election in the District of Columbia went to Joe Biden. So they're trying to get the ultimate home field advantage in all of these situations. The other federal case, the same attorney, Jack Smith, who is the special appointee, who has a terrible judicial record of bringing cases and creating evidence. He should have been disbarred a long time ago. But that's the case of the documents that Trump supposedly would not return, that he improperly had at Mar-a-Lago, where the FBI raided an ex-president's residence and confiscated all of the material. The bottom line on that case is Joe Biden had records dating back 3 decades, even back when he was a senator, and they collected all of those. And after that special prosecutor looked at that case, no charges. Joe's guilty of having documents he was not allowed to have. and he was fully knowledgeable that it was improper. But at this point, he's too old and too feeble and doesn't have enough memory to prosecute. So they let him off the hook for that. Hillary Clinton, before, also not president, had a server in her house that she was harboring all kinds of secret information and classified documents. We're going to decline to prosecute her as well because she didn't know that she was doing anything wrong. Well, Hillary Clinton is a celebrated lawyer, and that particular decision is still one of the most ridiculous in American history. So Hillary gets off the hook, Biden gets off the hook, but Donald Trump is being prosecuted for having records that don't belong to him and that he wasn't allowed to have. Well, let me just tell you this, folks. Donald Trump was president of the United States. He can take all the documents he wants because he alone, as a president, can classify or declassify those documents. And so he was allowed to be in possession. Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden as a senator and vice president, which was all the documents that he had, because as the current president, he wasn't hoarding any current, he can have those documents. But Joe Biden had documents from his vice presidency and his Senate years, and it is illegal for him to walk away with any of those documents. Hillary had those on her computer, but Biden had them physically in his presence because he was wanting to write a memoir, which he got an $8 million advance to do. So having all of those records, pretty valuable stuff. But he never was president, so thereby does not have the right to have those documents. And yet Donald Trump being prosecuted for that, it's a giant witch hunt. They can't beat him. He's going to win the presidency. The only way they can derail him is to try and convict him of something. So for this guy to say, well, surely all those can't be, you can't get off the hook on all those, that he's going to get convicted and you can't elect a felon to be president of the United States. Well, you can probably elect a felon or reject a felon that has been unfairly prosecuted in a third world country somewhere, because that's kind of standard procedure. And that's what we're on the brink of here. And don't fear for Donald Trump. He can handle himself. He's got a major defense team that is doing a fabulous job of insulating him from all of this ridiculous situation. But you need to fear for yourself and for me and for Tony Kurre and for your children and your grandchildren in the future, because if we get a justice system that does not ensure our rights and does not protect all of our constitutional liberties, we're sunk, folks, because that is the ultimate safety net for persecution of any American, is a blind and fair Justice Department. And that's why the judicial wing being weaponized now, as it's being, has to be stopped in its tracks. So an acquittal for Trump in New York, of all places, is going to sound a major alarm that this crap won't stand in the future. That's what I've got for today. Need to know. We'll be back next week. We'll have our special Memorial Day edition. We ran it last year, got a lot of great response, and it'll be back. We're going to run it again next week on the Need to Know program to honor the people that have given the last full measure of devotion to this country and laid down their life so you and I can live in the greatest liberty and freedom country ever conceived on earth. I'm Kip Kiefer. Thank you all for listening. Have a fantastic week. We'll be back next week here on TKR with Need to Know.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.